It didn't matter to the church, so they dismissed the poor a lot of the times. George Whitefield thought that God was personal. God, you should read the Bible and look at the Bible as if it's written to you, as if God is speaking to you. That was a new concept. He was challenging everything in England. So none of the preachers would allow him to speak inside the churches of England, so he would go out in the open air. And he would talk to people that had never heard the gospel before, because they'd never go to church, because they weren't welcome, because they were miners or they were farmers. And nobody had ever heard anybody talk about God the way George Whitefield talked about God. This man was so unbelievably brave. They would throw rocks at him. While he was speaking, people would throw rocks at him. One guy hid in a tree right where George Whitefield was preaching, and halfway through the sermon, he was urinated on, and he kept preaching. One time they released bulls after him. He kept going, and people kept coming. And then he crossed the water, and he came here. He crossed the water, and he saw something different here, something new here. He saw a willingness for people to look at the Scriptures, to look at God in a different way. George Whitefield was the one who really influenced these men. By the time of the Revolutionary War, George Whitefield had spoken in open air and spoken and given 15,000 sermons. 15,000 sermons by the time of the Revolution. 75% of all Americans had heard George Whitefield in person deliver one or more sermons. This man had a profound effect. It was called the Great Awakening. George Whitefield woke America up. And here's what he said. You're the chosen people. You are the chosen people. This is the land of milk and honey. And remember Moses. Remember the 10 Commandments. And remember the fire that burns. The fire, the blaze. The fire that burns but does not consume. It's the truth. Now we know it as, the truth shall set you free. My favorite new phrase that I read was actually said by James Garfield. James Garfield said, the truth shall set you free, but it's going to make you miserable first. How true it is. Stand in the blaze. Stand in the fire of God. Make sure that everything that you believe, everything that you do is in the fire of God. Because once that truth begins to burn, it will burn and consume everything except the truth. That's why these guys were successful. That's why these guys could do it. Because there was great and powerful truth in what they talked about, what they did. They were prepared to be a tool in the hand of God. A lot of people now don't believe in divine providence. A lot of people think these guys just somehow or another just made the country, that turned the country, this one country, into the country that changed everything on the planet. They somehow or another just think it just happened. It didn't. It was divine providence every step of the way. In 1775, George Whitefield had died. He had been dead for 5 years. But the Continental Army up in Massachusetts actually went to the church where he was buried. And this is kind of creepy, but they actually prayed in that church. And then afterwards, they went downstairs to his crypt. And he was decayed, but some of his clothing was left. And they clipped his collar and his cuffs off of his clothing. And every soldier walked into battle with a piece of George Whitefield with him. We need to remember George Whitefield. We need to look for George Whitefield. We need to be George Whitefields. We need to stand up for God. We need to stand up for the things that are right, the things that are true. We not only need to preach it, we need to be it every single day. I'm getting a lot of heat right now because I'm On August 28th, I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial. And I think a lot of people think I'm going to do a Tea Party rally, and I'm not. I'm actually bringing back an American tradition that nobody even knows about. It's something that George Washington did. George Washington knew that the only way we could beat the British Empire, remember, that was spooky. The dog run out, I thought, beer! Come on, it could have been. I'm going to restore something that I just read about recently in doing more research on these guys, about George Washington. I never knew how the Purple Heart was started. Purple Heart started in 1933 by FDR. It was started for being wounded, if you were wounded in action. But it was based on the badge of merit given by George Washington. We had lost this history until 33. George Washington knew if he was going to beat the most powerful army and navy on the planet, his soldiers and his people had to be good. They had to be God-fearing. They had to read the Bible. They had to do things of honor. So what he did is he had Martha make little purple hearts, and they were sewn, and they just said merit. And he would present it to someone in the military that did something of merit. He was the first guy to give an award to a commoner, a farmer. It was a badge of merit, something of honor, and he said he would keep your name in his book of merit. Well, the book has been lost. And up until 33, we didn't even know this. And now there are 3 badges of merit that we know are in existence. I hope to have one of them, one of the original ones, with me at the feet of Abraham Lincoln on 8/28 as we start it again. I am going to show America that there are good and decent people, that there are heroes. My son Rafe we were reading the story of, I think it was David and Goliath, and I said, David is an amazing guy. What a hero, huh? And he said, well, not really, Dad. He doesn't have a cape. He doesn't fly. I said, good point. He didn't fly. But he was a hero. And I realized we don't have any heroes anymore. Our sports heroes. I mean, really? Our sports heroes. The only heroes we have generally are in the military, or they're our cops or our firemen. And yet, somehow or another, it doesn't translate. It doesn't go out from them. Before that disease and that infection comes into them, we need to burn it out of ourselves, and we need to teach our children. Everybody says, I started it with, where's the next George Washington? Where is that guy? Where's the next Benjamin Franklin? Where's the next Sam Adams? Where are they? I'll tell you, they're about this tall right now. It is our job to teach them. It's our job to grow the next monument. George Washington was an amazing man. He's my favorite founder. George, I said that, and every founder I read, I was like, this one's my favorite. Then I'd get to Sam Adams, oh, this one's my favorite. But George Washington is my favorite. He was known as the indispensable man. And the reason why he was known as the indispensable man is because people trusted him. I can't think of a single man on earth in America, except for John the Huntsman, that I look to and I say, I believe him. I believe him. I know it to be true. I've seen him in action. Well, that's what George Washington was. People knew they could trust him. An honorable man. George Washington took his glasses off once and saved our country. George Washington, after the war, Congress was a lot like Congress is now. They're just a bunch of weasels. Not a lot has changed. So, Congress was not paying the soldiers. And they had fought hard. I mean, Valley Forge, you think it was bad? They didn't even have pants. It wasn't they had shoes. Some didn't have pants.